All right, today we are going to look at 8.5, which is going to be the start of factoring. We actually have a lot of different steps we need to go through for the factoring, but today will be the first day. We initially were going to use algebra tiles to do this, so you'll notice your notes have some algebra tile stuff at the beginning because of what we're having to do now. We won't be using algebra tiles, which means this lesson will be a little bit different. The first two examples are going to be the same. After that, they will be different, and there is not an assignment at the bottom of the section. However, there is an assignment that I posted under the learning target and the daily agenda, so make sure you get that one done. Mine are switched there just because of the way we're having to do things now. Okay, so for factoring, what we're basically trying to do is we're trying to take the trinomial and turn it back into two binomials. Okay, so kind of the opposite of what we've been doing before. Okay, because we did talk about how factoring is the opposite of multiplying, so we're trying to kind of go backwards here. Okay, so the way we want to do this, for these first couple, you'll notice that all your signs are addition signs. Okay, anytime that both of them are addition signs, that means that we are also going to have addition signs in our parentheses. Okay, again, we're creating two binomials, okay, and we have positive signs in both of them. Now, initially here for the first 2 days, we are not going to have any extra coefficients in front of the x squared. They will be just x squareds, so that means I will have just an x times x, because x times x gives me x squared. Okay, after you've dealt with that term, the next term you want to look at is the last one, which is called our C term. Okay, that is the one right now without a variable. Okay, eventually it could have a variable, but for right now it does not. What we need to do is we need to look at factors of this number. So this one's fairly easy because the only factors we have are 1 and 2. Okay, and what I have to ask myself is, does adding those two factors equal what my middle term is? And it does, because if I add 1 plus 2, I will get 3. That means 1 and 2 would be the correct numbers. So if you were to multiply this out, you would end up with the original problem. Okay, and we would do the same thing with the next one as well, and this would be your final answer then. We're just trying to get it back into its two binomials. Okay, so this one, because both the signs are positive, okay, again, both of these will be positive. Because of our x squared, we're going to again have an x and x. Now, factors of 6, we have two options here. Okay, you've got 1 and 6, or you've got 2 and 3. But the right combination is the one that's going to add to the middle term. Okay, so obviously 1 plus 6 equals 7, where 2 plus 3 only equals 5. So that means I want to use the 1 and 6. Doesn't matter what parenthesis they go in right now. Eventually it will when we start getting some extra numbers. But for right now, either one would be fine. Again, if you would multiply this out, okay, you would end up with the original problem. Okay, so those two were the same as the ones on your notes. However, the next couple are going to change a little bit. Okay, because again, we had to do some changing of some things just with the way we're having to do teaching this week. Okay, so for C and D, what I'm going to have you do is I want you to change the middle term from a positive to a negative. Okay, so for C, it would be x squared minus 5x plus 6. And for D, it's going to end up being x squared minus 6x plus 8. Now, what this does when I change that middle one to a negative is it's going to end up changing both of the signs in my parentheses to negatives as well. Okay, because when I multiply two negatives, I still get a positive, but when I add two negatives, I get a negative, which is kind of the patterns that we're looking for here. Okay, so I'll end up having the two parentheses. This time, both of them will be negative. Okay, because of my x squared, I'll again have an x and x. And then I'm looking for factors again. So we already did 6. We said it'd be 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Okay, I'm going to use the 2 and the 3 because if I add those, I do end up with 5. And, you know, actually they're negative 2 and negative 3. Okay, and negatives there as well. But the 2 and 3 can go in either spot. And that would be the correctly factored form. Okay, for the next one, same idea. Go ahead and do your two sets of parentheses. Going to have an x and x. Again, the middle term is negative, so I'll have minus and minus. So I'm looking at factors of 8 that give me negative 6. So your options would be -1, -8, or -2, -4. Okay, adding those together, I can see the -2 and -4 are the ones that will give me the 6 in the middle. Okay, so then those would be the correctly factored forms for those. Okay, so again, if they're both positive, then both of these are positive. If it's a negative positive, then they're both negative. Okay, and then there's one more case where we would have one of each in the parentheses. Okay, a positive and a negative, and that's the next two we'll look at. So the next examples are actually not even in your notes, so you're going to want to change them. Okay, so for E, it would end up being x squared minus x minus 20. And for F, I want you to change it to x squared minus 6x minus 40. And then we got one more that we will do as well. Okay, so if you look at these ones, you'll notice that both signs are negative on this one. Okay, if both signs are negative, it actually means you're going to have one of each. Because think about it, if I want to multiply and get a negative number, we have to have one positive, one negative. Okay, so that tells me I will end up having a positive and a negative in my signs. That will happen anytime the last term is negative. It actually won't matter what the middle term is right away. Okay, for your x squared, you're again going to end up having x and x. So now I'm looking at factors of -20. So my options would be a -1 and a positive 20, or I could flip-flop that. I could have a -2 and a 10, or again, I could flip-flop that. Or I could have -4, 5, or I could flip-flop that. So you actually have 6 different options to choose from. Again, you're looking for the one that adds to a -1, because that's technically what's there. Okay, so if you look at it, this would be the combination. 4 and -5 would add to -1. Okay, so that means I need the 4 with the positive, I need the 5 with the negative. This time it does matter where I put them because they have to have the correct sign with them. Okay, for the next one, same idea. We're going to have x and x. -40 tells me I'm going to have one of each when it comes to signs. Doesn't matter where I put positive, negative, as long as I match the correct number with it. So 40. Okay, so that means we got -1 and 40. I got 1 and -40. I could have 2 and the 20. And again, switch the signs. I couldn't have 3. I could have 4 and 10. Or we could have 5 and 8. And you don't have to list these all the time. If you can think through them in your head and come up with them, they do not have to be listed. You may want to initially, but hopefully you get to the point where you don't need to. Okay, so I'm looking for which combination adds to a -6. It would be this combination right here. So I want a +4 and I want a -10 as my final answer. Okay. And then last but not least, I have one more for you just to make sure we're good to go here. Okay, so for the last one, for G, I have x squared plus 10x minus 39. Okay, so you'll notice that, yes, the middle term is now positive, but the last term is negative. Okay, so that still means I'm going to have one of each. Okay, it just means when I add them together, I have to make sure I look for a positive 10 instead of a negative number. Okay, so for 39, we'd have -1 and 39, +1 and -39. Could have your 3 and 13. So we're looking for a positive 10, so that would be this combination right here. Okay, -3 and positive 13 would be the answer to that one. So again, just a matter of finding the factors of the last term that add to the middle term. You'll notice these are in standard form. That's why we made a big deal about it earlier, to make sure as long as you got them in standard form, okay, you are able to factor them. You'll notice there's a couple questions at the end of the notes. The first question really doesn't apply because we didn't use the algebra tiles, so we can ignore that one. If we look at the second one, though, it says explain the pattern that exists with the last term of the polynomial and the constants of each factor. Okay, so basically what we did is with the last term, we always were multiplying the constants, okay, to get that last term. Okay, like we did, we always look for factors of the last term, so factors mean multiplying. The last question says, explain the pattern that exists with the middle term of the polynomial and the constants of each factor. So with the middle term, we were looking to add. Okay, we would add the constants to get the middle term. So again, find multiply for the last term, add for the middle term, and then just make sure you kind of memorize those signs so you know what your signs need to be. Okay, so again, there's no assignment at the end here. However, there is an assignment if you go back to the daily agenda, so make sure you get that done. Answer the questions on the Google Classroom. And I hope to see you guys Monday. If not, then we will keep e-learning, I guess. But have a great day.